our guest is here, and he's the reason why I'm like I am. No, I'm not admitting that he's my father or anything, but but you know, I first sat in his class in 1976, and he was teaching from two books, Destruction of Black Civilization, and I had been looking for this book by Sheikh Anta Diop, African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality, and I learned so many profound things from him, and so I started listening to his podcast on Saturdays, and he was saying some things like, you know, he's talking about blacks and neoliberalism and Elon Musk and MAGA Trump takeover of the federal government. And what I was listening to was part of a 5-part series that explained neoliberalism, or MAGA corporate takeover of the federal government, how it occurred, and how it affects black people in the country and the world. And you know, he just kept saying things that were so profound till I picked up the phone and called him. And I don't know. I hope he's not insulted by this reference. Please don't be, because it's only love and respect that I have for you, Dr. Tashaka Seba. But do you remember the Warner Brothers, the old Warner Brothers cartoon where the big dog is walking around and the little dog is jumping around? Well, that's kind of like us. You know, he's the big dog, and I'm you know, running around. Hey, what about this? You know, and he's like, nah. And, you know, so anyway, I'm honored that he has agreed to come on our program again. I think the last time he was on was like three years ago, and he was talking about Malcolm. He's written so many great books regarding our people. My favorite one is The Return to the Divine Mother Principle of female and male equality. And that's actually one of my favorite books of his, but he's written several. I don't know if you saw the advertisement that I used, but I put a lot of his books in that advertisement. Anyway, Dr. Oba Tashaka is professor emeritus at San Francisco State. He's taught and educated so many people and done a lot of organization for our people, particularly in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And he was also, I mean, this says a lot to me too. He's probably not impressed by it, but he was a speaker at the Million Man March. You know, he was a speaker at the Million Man March. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my friend, my teacher, my Seba, where. That means great teacher also, Dr. Oba Tashaka. Take yourself off mute, sir.
Welcome.
You're muted, Dr. Tashaka, so unmute yourself.
Yeah, when I first started teaching at San Francisco State, the FBI was on my tail and doing its best to knock me out. I've never lost a battle. I let them take one of my jobs. You know, they had gone after me. I had got married in 1969 to my first wife. We were married for 33 years, and she was active with me in a lot of struggles. Nasa Tashaka. And so the community decided, I did too, that I needed a job that paid. Because up to that time, it had been 10 years of full-time organizing. The pay had been the love of my people. And So one of the jobs I got was Ray Richardson got it for me. Ray and Julian Richardson were like two of my important teachers. Marcus Bookstore was the university for the Black community. And Julian Richardson was my teacher per se, and then Ray Richardson became so and taught me, Asa Hilliard, and Wade Nobles. And so that's where my reading started and stuff. And so when I get married, Ray decided that I needed a job. I had already gotten one. It didn't last long. And so it was at Marin, where I taught at Martin Luther King Junior High School. And after a year, Ray was the advisor to the superintendent. So she advised him to hire me. See, I owe a lot to Black women. Thank God she liked me. And so after a year, they were going to give me a provisional teaching credential because I didn't have one. So that's a temporary one. And then, you can go and get your regular one. And the FBI filed a report on me, a COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program. After that, they would try and kill me 3 times, one of which they tried to do my organization in. I'm a counterinsurgency specialist, ex-Marine, but I didn't learn nothing in the Marine Corps. I didn't learn this from the Marines. The Marines do the dirty. They don't really teach you how to overcome the dirty. I already knew how to shoot. I was in the Boy Scouts. You know what I mean? So, they do a 17-page report. It said that I shouldn't be given a position as a teacher because one of the aims of COINTELPRO was to separate militants from the youth. And so they had a special category of going after anybody that taught. And so I'm driving to Sacramento to hire a lawyer. And I would win because these were 17 misdemeanors in the Black freedom movement. I was going to win. I was going to hire me an NAACP lawyer that always won these fights. But then halfway to Sacramento, my spirit says no. Now you're going to see why I'm telling you about the spirit, because y'all know, y'all in Wose, you're in the spirit, huh? When the spirit talks to me, it never gives the reason. And I don't hear any voice either. It's a feeling. And so I knew. I turned around, went back home. So I let them have that because I could have won that. And then so I didn't know why the ancestors, the spirits, had told me not to fight this, because I'm a fighter. And your spirit doesn't usually advise you not to fight, unless, of course, it's something you can't win, which I have enough sense to know when to fight, when not to fight, and when I can win, and blah, blah. So this is in 1972. 69 was when I decided to not, fight. And then it's in 72 that I find out why. I'm giving a speech at Malcolm X Unity House. That was our headquarters. And we would have Sunday meetings, hundreds of people. And during the week, we fed them 6 days a week. My first wife ran that program. Thousands of people we fed. Danny Glover said he stayed alive because of the food we fed him. And my first wife was a good chef. And of course, Pam, if you know her, she's a master chef. By the way, Brother Ustadi, who's in Woza, he loved my first wife. He liked a lot of things about her, but he really loved her cooking. Ustadi? And yes, so he asked me when I got my second wife, could she cook as good as Anasa? And I said, well, she's a chef. He discovered that she could, but there were certain dishes that Anasa could cook that nobody could cook as well. So I'm up here speaking, and so the guy comes up to me, his name was Njasani, and he said, you want to teach at San Francisco State? Well, here comes the sisters again. He was chair of Black Studies, but the people who were running it was Ray Richardson and Nancy Sikayu. And they had told him to hire me. Huh? So again, I owe a lot to my sister. So I found out the spirit was telling me not to go for that because the spirit knew that while I could teach at the elementary, junior high school, and I had run a preschool for a short period of time, my mother was a master teacher and ran a preschool for nearly 40 years, an academic preschool. That wasn't really what I was suited for. You know, I didn't know that. So I'm opening that to say that the spirit is all powerful. And what I'm going to open this with is spirit talk. But first, I want to show you something. This is a picture on probably your right, the guy with the big natural, that's me. Next to him is my best friend, Kehinde Solowazi. And then in the middle, on the top, is Fanya McKinney with the natural. And below is Queen Mother Moore sitting at a table. And next to her is Chancellor Williams. Huh? I said, I got to show.
Wow. Wow.
I got to show this.
Wow.
And May Mallory. Chancellor Williams is the one with the light suit on, you know. And in the background, the guy with the red crown on, that's Ron Phillips, who was from the Pan-African Congress Movement of the United Kingdom, which Pan-African People's Organization aligned with, and the Pan-African Secretariat at the 6th Pan-African Congress. So this is a picture of the major organizers and participants in the State of the Race conferences organized by the Pan-African Secretariat that the Pan-African People's Organization set up, which I still chair. They let me chair it. I don't know why they keep letting me chair it. And Thabiti, Ustadi, many others are members. These State of the Race conferences pulled together over 1,000 Black people. It was the biggest conferences held in the 70s. And you had John Henry Clark, Chancellor Williams, even Minister Louis Farrakhan came and gave an Afrocentric speech because his second in command schooled him on that. So that's something I just wanted to share with you. My topic for today is where do we go from here in the post-reconstruction era of a choice between two cultures? Where do we go from here in the post-reconstruction era of a choice between two cultures? I'm saying this is an era that in many ways is like 1876, except we've been winning in this era. This era started in 1968, where the goals of the system is to take back the gains we made in the second Reconstruction. The first was where, in the Hayes-Tilden Compromise, they took away the right to vote and sealed us into sharecropping, which was new slavery. We've been in the second period since 1968, and we shouldn't be in a period where Trump is in office. We could have won this. This is not like 1876, where we didn't have the power to affect the outcome. So that's a whole nother story. And we're in a seesaw battle with these forces right now. And so this is like the period of 1876, but it ain't the same, because the US and the West has fallen as a global power. The United States is falling. It's in decline. And you have the rise of Asia, and you will soon have the rise of Africa. And the African in America has considerable power. We need to understand it better, but we've wielded it quite well. You know, our people have done quite well for a lot of reasons. So that's my topic, and this is an era of the choice between two cultures. Minister Akubilan has made the point that he's watched these three shows. Brother Imhotep has observed that, you know, I've been addressing what's facing us. And there's been 5, and the 6th will be this Saturday, which is going to show how the choice between two cultures applies to white people. And by the way, this choice between two cultures, those are not my words. Those words come from God. And that has given me the ability to innovate a number of areas of thought that are on the ground, meaning you can apply this and you can win with this. And had the Democratic candidate for president understood this, she would have won. That's how good this one. I'll come back to this in a minute. First, we're 2 days away from the assassination of El Hajj Malik el-Shabazz, so I wanted to acknowledge him first. He was assassinated on February 21st, 1965, and he's the best political thinker produced in this country, period, Malcolm. And one of the two best organizers to come out of the 60s, him and Ella Baker. You can't say who's better because it's like apples and oranges. And he's my second master. And my first book, Political Legacy of Malcolm X, which took me, I don't know how long to write. It was my first book, was my attempt to let Malcolm speak for himself, since so many people had tried to redefine him. And what I would say is that Malcolm was a revolutionary. He was a Pan-Africanist and he was a nationalist. He believed in the unity of African people, and he loved African people. He loved humanity. But he was a revolutionary. And him and King, by the end of their lives, ended up in the same position, pretty much the same position, both saying that the movement had to move from what was then called by the media civil rights. We never called it that. It was called the Black Freedom Movement, to a human rights movement. King had a more practical understanding of this than Malcolm. Malcolm wanted to take the U.S. before the World Court, the United Nations, and of course, he brought his case to the Organization of African Unity. And so he was out for indicting the United States, and kind of like his ambition to be a lawyer. He was taking the lawyerly stance, and that was interesting. But King had concluded that this movement had moved from civil rights to human rights because we had exhausted what we could get under the Constitution, the right to vote, to be restored to the status of citizenship, and a number of other things. But he concluded that the Constitution didn't give us human rights, which is a right to a roof over your head, the right to a job, the right to an education, and because he was a revolutionary, and King and Malcolm shared this, a right to live under a society that was structured along the lines of freedom, rather than vulturistic, racist, capitalist, imperialist lines, where the system is set up to suck your blood. And that's what you're seeing right now in the White House. It's blood sucking going on in the name of we're going to save money. And the only people that believe that are the MAGA people, who are going to find out their blood's going to be sucked more than anybody else's because there's more of their blood to be sucked. And Trump is getting rich right now in the White House doing this. And of course, the richest man in the world as well. So to recognize El Hajj Malik el-Shabazz, better known as Malcolm X, who was my first master. I wear a goatee because he did. I used to talk like him and everything else. In fact, my first draft of the Political Legacy of Malcolm X, I sent it to Brother Jacob Carruthers, who was one of my masters. And Jake said, I can't tell where Malcolm ends and you begin. And that meant I needed to, that was just a draft. It wasn't finished. I'm no longer in Malcolm's shadow, but he definitely influenced me, as many others did in the movement. So I want to honor him. A man of sterling character, a person who, once he woke up, didn't shame us. And he wasn't as shameful as he appeared to be because he exaggerated his gangster credentials. He wasn't such a good gangster, thank God, because he might have got stuck in there, and he didn't, you know. So what I want to do today is talk about what it is to be human, which is to be African, but it is what it is to be human, and what is this thing we call life, and why are we here? And so I'm going to use myself as an example, but everybody should be looking at themselves to see, how is this applied to you? And how does it apply to your children and to your family members? So this question of who am I or who are you is ultimately a question. It's got two levels. One is the level of identity, which we often focus on, which is, you know, your existence as an African. And you'll see for me, I define that as both an African and a new African, and I'll come into that later. So that's the part determined by blood and ethnicity and history, you know. But the one I'm going to focus on today, largely, will be the one that deals with why are we here? Part of it is tied to our ethnicity, but largely it's tied to destiny. That is, why are we here and what is our purpose? And this applies to all human beings, not just to us. We get confused on this one because we get tied into religions, and religions give us their definition of why we're here. And I would make a distinction between, there's a lot of ways to distinguish religion and spirit systems. And so I could give you the technical definitions. I won't. I would just give you one that's the key. Religions are dictatorships, and they're dictatorships where God is telling you what to do. All religions do that. And you're subject to the will of God. And that is pure bull. You know what I mean? That is pure bull. Spirit systems, which we call spiritual, the correct term would be spirit systems, because there's no word for spiritual in any African language, because spiritual is a theory, it's a concept. Black people ain't so much into theories, you know. The Africans who embraced Christianity, for example, they embraced it after slavery on their own terms, and what it was that they worshiped was voodoo. That's what became the Black church. And the people who founded it, they were diviners. Du Bois intuited it. I've got the proof on it. He was right. He said that the leaders of Blacks were the healers of the sick, the comforter of the sorrowful, you know, the rude and rough leaders of the people, you know. And on every plantation, you had these people who would divine your future. And when enslaved Africans were asked, particularly in the WPA Work Project Administration interviews, where they were interviewed on their experiences of being enslaved, they all gave the same answer. So when Black people give you the same answer, they're putting the wool over you, you know. We're smart. And so they would say, we went to the diviner to prevent a whipping. Yeah, that's true. It's what you call the germ of truth. But what was the main reason they went to the diviner? It was to consult their destiny. You would say, what destiny does a slave have? A destiny to fight, a destiny to get free, a destiny to be the best human being you could be under those circumstances, a destiny to shape a culture, which is what we did in enslavement. You know, each circumstance dictates what you're going to do. And so when Frederick Douglass was advised by one of the wise people on the plantation not to run away, because he said, the eagle will get you. That was something he saw. Fred didn't listen, he got caught. The eagle was the United States. But then he gave him other advice. He gave him a protective charm. And he said, as long as I've had one of these, no white man has laid their hands on me. And that's what inspired Frederick Douglass to fight and whip Covey, the slave breaker, for over 2 hours. It was something from Africa. But the main thing you get from Africa is this: who you are. No other people have this answer better than we do. The Hindus, they have something because they have the idea of reincarnation and a bunch of ideas about you paying for past lives and stuff like that. They got that, but they don't have the root. And all African systems have this. All African systems do, including the Kemetic, but you won't get it in the Kemetic system because it probably was secret and it probably wasn't passed on in writings. But the Yoruba call destiny Ori. I'm into Ifa, but I have the Yoruba system. I have not been initiated. My spirit doesn't want me to be initiated. Wade Nobles and I have the same Babalao, Ifeyemi, who's a Araba, the second highest office in Ifa, and I'm alive because of him. Because at certain points where I could be dead, one in particular, he warned me and then did things to prevent me from going to the other side. So I'm into Ifa, but I am not an initiate of Ifa. Wade Nobles is. My spirit don't want me to be. There's reasons for that. So according to Ifa, but also according to parapsychology, and if you do anything, if you haven't done it, you should go to your internet, and check into past lives. Check into past lives. And you're going to see thousands of accounts of people who have died on the operating table or fallen down somewhere and lost their life for a period of time. It could be 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Any of you heard of these before? Past life experiences? If you have, raise your hand. The ones who are here. Right. They all say the same thing. But it's what Ifa says. It's what the Igbos say. It's what the Akan say. It's what all Africans say. Why we're the first people. So we're in closest touch with root knowledge, you know? So what do they say? In heaven, in the presence of God, and these are people who were Christians largely, because this is coming from the US, or the Hindus have it, though they don't talk about this part, because like I think their religious system keeps them away from this. But here, they all say that they saw spirits in heaven picking their destiny in the presence of God. And recently I was reading something where it got to real detail, better detail than I've ever seen before. And where it went through how the person who's a spirit in heaven was picking each particular aspect of their being, how they looked, what level of intelligence they had, whether they were good looking or just average looking or smart or exceptionally smart. So this one guy was explaining that he, of course, picked the best looking. And then God would show him what the implications were. You could become a player. You could think that you're so sharp that everybody's going to fall for you. Now, there's ways to check that. I'm an astrologer, so I know that there are ways to pick certain things that will check you on that. But so when he got that, he said, well, okay, he didn't want to be the best looking. So he took something less good looking. And then he wanted to be a genius. And that's probably what most people want when they're in heaven. Oh, I want to be a genius. And then he showed this person that if you come in exceptionally smart, you're probably going to be exceptionally arrogant. So is that what you want? And so, but it was showing you the picking process and how detailed it was. And then these parapsychologists say the same thing that the Yorubas say, that in heaven, you pick your destiny, you pick your parents, you pick your time of birth, you pick your strengths and weaknesses, you pick your trials in life. The one thing you don't pick is what you're going to do when you get here. That's the whole point of being here. It's called free will. So don't be telling me that God is dictating this. No, God is not. I know people that get frustrated over spirituality or religion because the world is so messed up. So they say, why did God let this happen? God didn't do this. It wasn't God that put us on the good ship, Jesus. You know, huh? That was white people. And it was some black people that conspired in doing it.
Yes, yes.
So the fact is, that was free will. So in talking about the topic, where do we go from here in the post-reconstruction era of a choice between two cultures, I first want to talk about how we choose who we are. And so you're going to say, oh yeah, but you chose to live during slavery? Huh? Well, is it that, or is it that you were choosing trials? Were you choosing a time where you could be tested? Because the real point of coming to Earth isn't just to express the gifts we have, but it's to undergo the trials of life that will test us in our weaknesses. And the greatest lessons we learn in life are from the worst experiences in life. Those are the greatest teachers. I see a look like, really? I can say that my greatest growth has come through the greatest trials, because we come in here with gifts. So I got mine, you got yours. So you're able to do that. Well, that's what resides within you. But what about those things you can't do? What about those things you don't know? That's why you're here, more than anything, to use the gifts to propel you on your life course and to make a contribution to humanity. But the main reason you're here is to grow. I asked Pam, my wife, she's a member of WOSA. Y'all know Pam?
Yes.
Quite a lady. I had so many different things I was looking for in a lady. I met her in London after speaking the 60th anniversary of the 5th Pan-African Congress, because I chaired the political committee to the 6th Pan-African Congress. The last home I stayed in was hers, And I wasn't looking, but I was looking at that time, but I wasn't in London looking. But I had laid out a laundry list of what I wanted in a woman. I had learned, because my biggest lessons have come in the area of relationships. That's where I wasn't so strong, huh? And I had already gone through trials to overcome some of my weaknesses. I was strong on the masculine and weak on the feminine, which a lot of people say, yeah, that's brothers, that's men. No, mine was different. Some things that the average person would easily solve, that wasn't me. That was things I had to learn. 33-year marriage, that was a classroom. I learned a lot. Introspection for 5 years, 3 months a year. I went out and camped out and looked at myself 3 months a year for 5 years. I'm an astrologer. So I knew that I had this as a weakness. And then it's when I undergo this transformation, I start writing the mother principle. The mother principle is the completion of my quest, which was the imbalance of male and female. And as a result of what I learned through the beautiful light that I won't go on through here, it gave me the formula for just societies. It was a completion of my weaknesses. Strong on the masculine, weak on the feminine. But the book, Return to the African Mother Principle of Male and Female Equality, is a statement of that, and it comes from God. And it's really the basis for just societies. I'm not going into that today. So what I'm saying is that destiny is really the deal when it comes to why we are here. I'm finishing a book on Seba and Sodiah, and it's dealing with how we master the inner light within. And I've been working on it now 30 years. It'll be out this year. And I interviewed 6 masters for this: John Henry Clark, Theophilo Benga. Some I didn't interview. It was indirectly studying them, Ella Baker, Amilcar Cabral, and others. And myself, because I went through this, you can't explain this unless you went through it. And so this is a system that replaces the teaching system of the West that you call pedagogy, but this is much bigger than pedagogy. Pedagogy is a system for instruction in the classroom. This is much bigger because the biggest classroom is the cosmos. The biggest teacher is God, you know, and everything in life is a learning experience, everything in life. So the key thing about destiny is when we pick our destiny in heaven, our gifts, our strengths, our weaknesses, our parents, and by the way, those are agreements that were made much earlier with your parents. They may have been children in another lifetime. It may have flipped, but they have agreed to this. They don't remember it. And most of the time when you come to earth, you don't remember it either. And so the big test in life is when the cosmic classroom door opens. And that's when we have the opportunity to fulfill what we said we wanted to do in heaven. And that's when we really get tested on our strengths and weaknesses. And that's when we can make our contribution to humanity, you know? So you've seen Kendrick Lamar and his beautiful performance at the Super Bowl. Kendrick talks about how he saw, and this white boy, but he saw Eminem performing, and he said, how did he do that? And then he was a stutterer, but he a straight A student, a little guy, 5'4". And he gets a teacher that exposes him to poetry. Well, he's a lyricist, you know. He's, you know, received a high award for his writings, a Pulitzer Prize. What rapper, or for that matter, what jazz musician or anybody else has received a Pulitzer Prize? It doesn't mean they weren't entitled to it. They should have. In fact, the indigenous poetry of America is Native American and New African or African American. And the blues is the basis for the basic poetry of this country other than Native American poetry. But the point is, when he got exposed to that poetry, it helped him to handle his stuttering, but he recognized something. This was a destiny choice he made in heaven. This teacher, that was no accident. See, everything you face in life, there's no accidents. That accident is a superstition. They're telling you this was an accident. No, everything that happens in your life, there's something behind it. So in heaven, you're outside of space and you're outside of time. There's no time in heaven. God is infinite force outside of space and outside of time. Heaven is the realm of experience, and there are different heavens, different levels of heaven, dependent upon how evolved the spirit is. The highest level is the level of the light where God exists, where God resides, you know, and that's the realm of the lights. And God is a great white light. I've seen that light. I've had FaceTime with that light. This choice between two cultures, that comes from that light, you know? So in my case, and I'm using myself as an example so you can relate it to yourself, because I'm nothing special. We all have these experiences. My classroom and my destiny door opening experience came at the right time. And destiny time is different from clock time. Destiny time is always right. Clock time, well, that's 24 hours. That's basically been invented so that they can keep you working for a long time. The white boy loves a clock, you know what I mean? But destiny clock time is different. So in 1960, my mother's best friend, Ella Hill Hutch, who became the mother of the San Francisco Freedom Movement, of the three of us, I have a brother and a sister, only me, she says, because my name was Bill Bradley. Bill, you need to come to a CORE meeting. Congress of Racial Equality. I didn't know what CORE was. I had identified with the Montgomery bus boycott. I was proud of what Black people were doing. In my debate class at San Francisco State, I debated on the Cuban Revolution and defended the Cuban Revolution, but I was not a revolutionary. My father was. I wasn't. I was asleep, you know. I was on remote control and didn't know it, you know. And so when I walked through that door, that was my destiny door, because 1960 is when the movement really kicked off and went into high gear. I didn't know I was here to do that. There are two types of people on the destiny road: those who know their destiny and those who find out. I was in the second category. My mother was in the first category. She always knew why she was here. She was to be loved, to have children, and to run a school. And she told my sister, once she had completed that job of running a school, it was time for her to leave, except she resisted it for a number of years. You know that saying, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die? But my mother was staying alive to help my brother, because she saw he had problems. That was her main reason. But that was also a good excuse. She got to live longer, because she told me she was living on borrowed time, because my mother was a straight A student, always maintained the same weight, was energetic, would get up when she ran her preschool from 4 in the morning until 6 at night, go eat something, lay in the bathtub, and then sleep for 10 hours. That was my mother, you know what I mean? And was an artist. She was a poet. I am too, but I'm an amateur one. So when that door opened up, I had a choice, and each person has this opportunity. And I didn't know what I was walking through, because I didn't have a sense of why I was here. My mother did. She knew exactly, you know, step by step, but I was one of those that didn't know. But in walking through that destiny door, I discovered my life purpose, a purpose that I had picked in heaven. I walked through the perfect time. I didn't know, the very beginning of the movement. And so as a result of walking through that door, I discovered gifts that I didn't know I had, because my gifts are unorthodox. Strategy, which is my first gift. What university teaches strategy? Obenga read my book, Return to the African Mother Principle, Male and Female Equality. He stayed here right after I got him hired in 1998. And he read the book and he said, strategy, they don't teach this in university. I said, of course not, Obenga, that's power. The only place they're going to teach that is West Point. And that's failed strategy, because when you need strategy for war, it means that your real strategy is broken down, because you should be able to win without a fight. That's the art of strategy, winning without a fight. I've never lost a battle, and most of my battles have been won without a fight. That's the art, but I've had to fight too. And when you fight, you got to know your enemy's weakness and attack them where they're weak, and don't allow them to attack yours. And that means covering your weaknesses, which means working on them, because we all have weaknesses. And as Amilcar Cabral said, the greatest enemy of a people are their own weaknesses. And I would say this of Black people. Our greatest weakness is we don't know our own strengths. That's our biggest weakness. We're into this woe is white supremacy talk. I don't use that talk anymore. Yeah, in the past, white supremacy, I would call that slavery was an example of white supremacy. You know what I mean? I don't use that term anymore. I mean, my size 13 has led to victories all my life, but that ain't why. They're not supreme in the world anymore. Quit talking that talk. I got high blood pressure because of, you know, white supremacy. A bad heart because of white supremacy. Now, you ain't taking care of your health. That's why. And you know what the healthiest thing to do when you're oppressed is kick your enemies behind. And I don't mean physically, though that's fine. I don't mean that. That's the healthiest thing. That's one reason why I'm healthy. Losing ain't good for your health. Y'all are finding that out right now with Donald the chump. He shouldn't be in office. You know what I mean? 5 to 6 million people didn't vote. And the first time I heard some black people talking about, I ain't voting this time. How stupid can you get? Don't you realize your numbers outnumber theirs? You have an opportunity, as Malcolm said, they can put you in the White House or the doghouse. You had the opportunity to stick them in the doghouse. You hear me? And I ain't just blaming us, because we were intelligent. 87% of our people did what was right. The Latinos went stupid. 54% of their men voting for him, and now they're being sent out of the country. Huh? You know what I mean? Huh? Talking about, I'm the good Latino. You all come out of the Mexicans and the other Latinos, you come out of Spanish structured systems. And in the case of the Mexican, you're part Indian, part African, and part Spanish. The best part of you is the African, and it is the Native American part. Right behind me, I have a picture of one of the greatest revolutionaries in the history of the world. And I did a show on this using Malcolm X's speech, Message to the Grassroots, to explore 3 revolutions: the Chinese Revolution and the Mexican Revolution. Those were real revolutions. And the Russian Revolution, and actually I talked about the American one because Malcolm did, those weren't revolutions. They were not. They were coups d'etats, where people seized power at the top. But the Mexicans had a rumble for 10 years, and it was one of the best revolutions. You see anybody studying that? And Emiliano Zapata was one of the greatest leaders that the world has produced. His grandmother was African, came from the state of Morelos, and his vision came out of African and Native American culture: communalism, the right to share the air, land, and water. Bill Clinton destroyed that. And how many Negroes have run behind Bill Clinton talking about he was the greatest president? Really, he's the one that took your welfare, and had Negroes talking about, well, I don't like welfare either. Yeah, that's only because you didn't need it. Corporations get welfare, and they're taking all your tax dollars. You hear me? All of it. It goes into the defense budget. And now they're out to take Social Security. They're out to take Medicaid and Medicare. They're out to take food stamps. They're out to take those supplements that, cut down on your rent. They're out to take all of it. Where is it going to go? In their pockets. In their pockets. So the thing is, when, we're dealing with this issue of destiny and choice, while we pick our destiny in heaven, we make our choices here. And we all make some wrong choices. That's also how you learn. Ain't none of us coming in here. I've never lost a battle. So when it comes to strategy, I haven't made any mistakes, but in life, I've made numerous ones, like everybody else. And that's where you really learn. You know what I mean? Huh? So this is real key. And what's interesting in terms of the time in which I chose to walk through that destiny door, not knowing what was on the other side, but listening to myself, spirits, it would seem to be all right. And once I got in, your common sense dictates, and I saw this is an important movement. And so as a result of that, then I was able to discover my purpose in life. So who I am now is shaped by that decision. That is the key point. So for 65 years, I've been engaged in battles, in scholarship, in spiritual work. 65 years. No let up. 24/7. That's me. Once I get into something, it's total. You know what I mean? That's me. We have a saying in Africa: to know the truth, you must be the truth. The African way of learning is being what you learn. It's not just prating it out and talking it. So in Kemet, speak truth, do truth. That is really telling you that's the path to being whatever you were put here to be. Because each of us have our own truths. You know what I mean? If you're an artist, you've got your own truth. If you're a scientist, you've got your own truth. If you're an athlete, like Serena Williams. Boy, that crip dance walk. That was super bad. Bad beyond belief. I mean, that whole thing that the brother did, it was 13 minutes, choreographed, carefully laid out, exclamation points all over the place, and double, triple, and quadruple meanings in every little thing he did. You know, Brother Lamar, I take my hat off to you. That was pure beauty. And it's also telling you that these younger people have got some stuff going. For those of us who think they've lost it, Black Lives Matter didn't lose it. Without them, Trump would have been in office in 2020, along with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and COVID. But having action on the ground was key. And it was these young people, largely sisters, who were orchestrating that because they were coming out of our culture, a democratic culture grounded in freedom. So in a choice between two cultures, that's key. Now, for me, I'm three things. I'm a spirit, scholar, warrior. That's me. That was a process of becoming. And so for me, when I joined the Black Freedom Movement, little did I know that I'd be in it for a lifetime. But little did I know the first one I joined was the most important one I would be engaged in my whole life. Because I've been in many movements and they have been important in my life and in the lives of others. But it was the San Francisco Freedom, Black Power, Black Freedom movement that was the most important. And I want to say, most of you don't know 2 cents about it. It was the mother movement of all the movements in the Bay Area. I want to point this out. The greatest movements were in the South, led by King, by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and CORE, the group I was in, Congress of Racial Equality. The greatest victories were there. Without that, there would have been no Northern movement. And they basically ended what was legal slavery through Birmingham and Selma. I was a March Marshal in Selma. I was arrested there, but I was just a marshal. It was King's movement coming out of Birmingham that concocted this idea of the march from Selma to Montgomery that then forced the government to get your right to vote back, which the Supreme Court has whittled down to pieces. The Roberts Supreme Court has taken the enforcement provisions of the Voting Rights Act out. And Brother Imhotep sent me something, I still haven't been able to read it, that proves that a good 3 million votes were stolen in this election. The victory was 2,300,000, with 5 to 6 million staying at home. That was on Harris's side, which was real dumb. And some of them have been immobilized by the Trump propaganda that came on the internet that said that neither the Democrats or Republicans have done you any good. And so that was designed to say, because they knew they ain't voting for us, they ain't that stupid. Just don't vote. And so my best friend, K. Solowazi, is telling me, first time he's hearing some blacks talking, he said, these are Trump talking points. They ain't done nothing for us. Why should I vote? And then the dumb ones were saying they're going to vote for him, not knowing that Biden was the first president that actually put a program into effect. He didn't do a good job of publicizing it. The media did their best to see that it wasn't publicized and ran him out of office, saying that he was, incapable, too old. Well, Trump doesn't have a brain. He doesn't know anything. He's absolutely empty. And I'm not saying this to make fun of anybody. The boy don't know nothing. All this tearing up of the federal government, Trump is what you call stupid. Here's the definition of stupid. There's a lot of definitions. I did a show on stupid. Of these 5, that was one of them. Stupid. It's very hard to talk about stupid. So one thing that characterizes stupid is when you do something and don't think about the consequences of what you do before you do it. These are Trump's words. I'm going to do this and let's see what happens. Huh? So they're tearing the government up right now. And so you are seeing people in the aeronautics administration, that handles airplanes and stuff, all these planes falling out of the sky. You think it's all by accident? You've got a bird, and you've got other things that are going on right now. And they've got, and the CDC got rid of some of their most important epidemiologists. Huh? And then when they go after US aid, that isn't, see, they're also going on the stupid that Americans have, and some blacks too, where they say they need to quit spending all that money overseas and give it to us. No, you don't know what you're talking about. That's 1% of the budget. No, you should be saying they need to stop spending this defense money, right? Which they've had 6 audits of the Defense Department, and they've shown that trillions of dollars have gone up missing. And I just saw on C-SPAN where the Democrats and Republicans were talking about defense, and both are on the side of always giving the Defense Department more money. So a dumb Democrat says, I agree, we should increase the defense budget by $179 billion. But then they think they're slick. They say, but we want another $179 billion for social programs. He didn't say that's what it was for, but that's what it was for. Well, that isn't how you do that. You come in and say, if you want your $179 billion, then you're going to have to give me this for that, because it's going to take 60 votes to pass this budget to begin with. And you ain't got 60. Huh? They gave away the store without even trying. So we have some people, to this day, I hear it among our own people. Well, yeah, they're going after US aid. Well, yeah, they spend too much money. They're 1% of the budget. By the way, when they knocked out welfare, that was less than 1% of the budget. And guess what Clinton did? He went and put more money into the defense budget. He wasn't about saving money. He was about appeasing the racist whites, which he was one of, by saying, I'll be hard on blacks while at the same time they'll vote for me because I'll grin them to death. I'll put them in all the unimportant cabinet positions possible. He's the worst president black people have had other than Trump. Huh? So going back to this, in my case, when I'm picking my destiny, walk through that door, I'm discovering my purposes. And over time, as we all do, we have gifts, but they evolve, they develop over time. And so I'm a spirit scholar warrior. But the spirit part of it gets developed more through time. The warrior comes first, the scholarship comes second. Spirit is always in there, but the real teachings that will come from spirit evolve as I grow and develop. And as I experience trials in life, the ones that I've just referred to most in male-female relationships, in my relationships, those were the real trying and testing things that really led to my greatest spiritual insights. So the Black freedom movement, on the one hand, the San Francisco one is the most important in the North. Why? We're the only ones that defeated an entire economic power structure for jobs. We're the only one that organized the total Black community, 45,000 block by block. The only time that's been done is by Denmark Vesey when he organized his rebellion in South Carolina. Power among Black people is in the people. Power for white people is in institutions. So if you don't organize Black people at the grassroots level, you don't really have power. Harold Washington, when he was mayor of Chicago, Blacks had the opportunity, because then it was over 1 million Blacks in Chicago. Now it's 600,000. Now it's 600,000 now. Had they organized a block system underneath them, it wouldn't have mattered if he croaked the next minute. Blacks would have power. That's how the Irish ran Chicago, except I'm not talking an Irish machine. So that movement has been my palette, meaning I'm an artist. My stuff is about beauty. Whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to bring beauty in. And so the battlefield is where I draw from first. Everything else is after that. I'm an innovator of 7 fields of thought. 3 of them come from experience, 4 of them come from God. Either way, the key to innovation is when you're creating new systems. In science, all innovations in science come from God. Why? Because scientific innovators like George Washington Carver or Einstein, they're discovering new laws of the cosmos. Only God can give you that. You need to know the basic stuff to access that. But it's God that will give you the ultimate answer. So the theory of relativity came to Einstein in a dream. George Washington Carver is the greatest scientist in the world because he was thinking God's thoughts all the time. All the time. He had so many breakthroughs in science, you can't count them. Henry Ford gave him a blank check because he knew had he put $1 billion on it, he'd get 50 billion, 100 billion. You hear me? And he would go into a laboratory and say he was going to do creative science. That's when he come up with new stuff. But he was communicating with plants because everything God creates is spirit. Everything is intelligent. And so whereas the European goes and carries out war against nature and treats nature like it's inanimate, it's a material thing that's under their control, just as religion treats you as someone under the control of God, and it's always a man that's in charge. God's not a man or a woman. God is infinite force. God is beauty beyond beauty. Love beyond any experience of love. I'm telling you my experience, but you all know this. You all have had your own experience. Kindness beyond all kindness. Humility, gentleness beyond all gentleness. There's no power. God is the ultimate power, but God is never manifest God's self as power. Doesn't have to. And God has given up God's power to us to let us do what we want to do. And look at the mess that's being made. You hear me? And so this topic, a choice between 2 cultures, is about the choice that we are faced now between the worst features of Aryan or European American culture and our culture, African and new African culture. And the real key thing for us to get out of any mess we're in is to know our culture. That's one of the reasons why we have a weakness in not knowing our strength. Our greatest strength is in our culture. It's in our people, but our people are a manifestation of their culture. Amilcar Cabral, the greatest leader in the 20th century, the guy with the sunglasses right behind me, the greatest leader of the 20th century, said the liberation movement is an act of culture. And then he said, most people in liberation movement are not conscious of this. They're conscious of the most obvious parts. The Chinese are conscious that they're leaders and emperor. They know that this goes way back in Chinese history, 221 BC, when they unified. They know that. But they don't know all the ways in which the way in which their leadership works is an expression of their culture. The European definitely doesn't. Donald Trump is an expression of the essence of Aryanism. And what is the essence of Aryanism? It's cruelty. It's arbitrary freedom. Whatever they get, they exercise it for one reason, because they can. You can't altogether predict what Trump's going to do, because he can't. Because he's wielding power and he's like, I hate to use this term, a sissy in the YMCA. He's so happy. He wakes up every morning just thinking. He doesn't think really, but just doing whatever comes to him, whatever comes out of his mouth. Remember the Kemetic adage, speak before you speak. The worst thing you can do is open your mouth and not think about what's coming out of it. That ain't improvising, that's stupidity. That's stupid. You hear me? And then you're going to have to run back some of the stuff you did. But just think about the stuff you're not going to run back. You hear me? So that's what we're faced with. So a choice between two cultures, whatever we do now, we have to draw from the best of our culture, from the best, ancient and modern. The new African, here in Wose, you all are dealing with Kemet and you're dealing with ancient African civilization, the spirituality that comes out of it. That's important. But you need to put as much time in examining our culture, the one we shaped here, which I call New African, because the African in America was faced with a quandary that the African in the Caribbean and South America did not face, particularly in the Caribbean. They were a majority, 99% in most of those islands. So Eric Williams, their great scholar, Capitalism and Slavery, the author of that and others, Prime Minister of Trinidad, he made the comment that when Africans came to the Caribbean, they dropped African culture in the Caribbean, which means Africans were dropped in the Caribbean. And there wasn't hardly anybody else. There were a handful of whites, but the overwhelming majority of people were African. So they have a hybrid culture where it's fundamentally African with European culture running alongside of it. And then they have a language, that is a mixture of African and whatever the European language is, Spanish, English, whatever, What happened here? We came into a settler colony where whites were carrying out a genocidal campaign against Native Americans and became the dominant ethnic force in the country. Though in spots in the South, South Carolina, Mississippi, place like that, we were either the majority or a large minority. But the thing is, given the numbers they had, they could get away with outlawing the drum. They couldn't do that in the Caribbean. So what did we do? We turned our bodies into a drum. But most important, they tried to police the culture, but they couldn't succeed. Why? Because the majority of the plantations we were enslaved on were large plantations where blacks outnumbered whites, and we could continue the culture. So what we had to do here that was different than the Caribbean, we had to draw from the fundamental principles of African culture. What are those? Spirit, family, the belief in freedom, but a particular version of it, because they believe in freedom too. That means do whatever you want. We believe that freedom's not arbitrary. Freedom requires discipline. And from discipline comes the ability to create. Their path to freedom is to control. Our path to freedom is to be godlike, to create, to bring beauty into the world. But you can only do it if you're disciplined, if you practice the truth. Whatever your art is, you master it. And the most important art we master is the art of being human, being good people. Do you know the best African we produced in this country was the African in slavery? Did you know that? Because we get this picture of the woe is me, the broken African, all the rest of this stuff. The average enslaved African was between 18 and 30. Those were rebellious people. And there were two types: prisoners of war that were captured in war, and others who were sold, either by their own people to the whites, or the whites grabbed them and enslaved them. But they came in with a resistant fighting spirit. Don't forget the mantra of the New African. We sang it throughout the Black freedom movement. Oh, freedom over me. Before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. That's not the song of somebody that's in slavery. Before I'll be a slave. That's what they're saying. They're telling you, yeah, you got some chains on my wrist or on my ankles, but not on my mind. We won the Civil War, but only on condition that it be for freedom, a guiding principle of our culture. You hear me? Old Abe issued that Emancipation Proclamation because he was losing. He told you, if I could win this war without freeing a single slave, I would. And he went on with all the things he wouldn't do, none of which included our freedom. But if I had to, I would. And he lost so many times at the hands of the Confederacy, even though he had the, industrial output, the guns and everything else, they had the leadership. It's only when double O soul got into the struggle, 189,000 to be exact, a few sisters disguised as men, but mostly brothers. It's only when we got in did we tip the balance. Without us, there would be a South and there would be a North, because without us, they couldn't win. Black warrior is the baddest warrior on the planet. You hear me? And he had the full support of his women, but it was based on cultural principles. The principle of freedom, the principle that their children would have the right to be whatever they wanted to be, to fulfill their destiny. That was what they were really fighting for. So when they fought for schools, it was for their children, for them too. And why? What was the main reason? So they couldn't be cheated in contracts and stuff. It was very practical, you know what I mean? But they also wanted them to be whatever they wanted to be, and it's not putting down the oral tradition. So when we're looking at what we're faced with right now and the question of destiny, we all have a choice to make in terms of why we're here and to pursue our destiny. I know many of you have in the course of your life. Many of the youngsters are in the process of fulfilling it. But one of the things it means is, in fulfilling our destiny at this time, we're faced with a second post-reconstruction. And this is a period like the first, but unlike, we have power in this one. And so the question is, how do we use it? The first thing is to understand the nature of this power, period. This is a period of nationalism for whites. MAGAism is nationalism, white nationalism, based on evangelical Christianity and the propaganda that they put out behind that. And so you're seeing now with the Trump administration, they're reaching out to the right wing in Europe. You've seen Elon Musk going to Germany. And you've also seen the Vice President Vance just addressing a European meeting where he's saying that you should allow the right wing in Europe to emerge. And the Germans have made a decision that they will not allow any of these Nazi-type groups to be a coalition partner with them. If some of them get into the parliament, they're not going to coalesce with them. But Elon Musk has gone and said, you need to free him up. That was a Nazi salute he gave. He's from South Africa. This is the same guy who's up there lying, telling Trump that blacks have taken all the land from whites, and which they should have. What's wrong with that? It's our land. But it hadn't happened. Yeah. And then Trump talking about he ain't providing no aid to South Africa until they light up on what they hadn't done. All you have to do is tell Trump something that happened, and it happened. You understand? So what you're seeing is a white nationalism centered around MAGA in this country, and at the same time spreading throughout Europe. The government in Italy is run by the right wing. The prime minister of France just beat back an attempt by the right wing to control the government. And then instead of putting into office a socialist, he put a conservative in. So he's in the middle of a struggle right now. And the British, they have a system where labor has come to power and finally defeated the conservatives. And you've had Musk going into Britain supporting the conservatives, supporting the right wing, because he sees real power, white power, you know, in the right way. And he said before he started doing, you know, Trump's dirty work after, you know, putting 200 and 350 million, whatever it was, into the campaign, buying his way in. He said, only white men should run America. And he said only men. He didn't say white men. He said only a few men should run America. Well, that they already have been. Guess what? You know what I mean? But the thing is, he meant him and others. So if you watch the series I've done, and I would encourage all of you that are watching this, if you have not gone to my show, the Dr. Oba Tashaka Show, when you go in, hit the red button, the subscriber button, so that we can increase our subscription, because they put us on low, slow algorithms. I've been doing this for 5 years, put my own money in it. I'm not taking any corporate money. Everything I've done, I've financed it, or we've financed it. I've not taken money from the white boy, because he who pays the piper calls the tune. And Bach and Mozart ain't exactly what we dance to. You hear me? And I know they say Beethoven was black, but that music he was playing, it may have had some improvisation to it, but it was white. It was intellectualized. It was dead. The same way they danced. I won't go into some of the other things they can't do because of that. And that's what usually messes us up, is when we come to their institutions and we learn how not to feel. And that goes all the way to not fighting, except with our mouth. And usually it's compromised, because they've been telling us to be reasonable. Or as
Dr. Tashaka, we are scheduled to end at 6:30. I'm going to ask.
I'm going to stop.
No, just let me. If you're willing, and if everybody on this program is willing, we can go on after 6:30, and perhaps you'll allow time for Q&A. Yeah, and because I know that people want to. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. I'm seeing a lot of good things in the chat. I like what Sebastian put here. He said, Baba Tashaka is spitting real knowledge. And I think he speaks for all of us in this. I've gotten a lot of good comments on here, and everybody is excited. I'm so glad that I was inspired by the Spirit to reach out to you to come to us this evening. So I just wanted to say that. And sorry, I hope I didn't stop your train of thought.
No, that's fine.
But somebody just put in, Queen Sheila put in, teach Baba Tashaka, tell it. So go ahead, man.
Okay. Yeah, so what I want to do is just put a framework for what we're dealing with right now, and then just talk about some general areas of what needs to be done, because no one's got the answer to this one, because this is too big for any one person to say, oh, you do this and it's all solved. No, it ain't, And by the way, I think that a lot of what Trump is doing is going to promote the more rapid decline of the United States. And I'm a revolutionary, see, so as paraphrasing Malcolm, what makes them sad makes me glad. But blacks will say, but it can fall on us. Yeah, because some of us fell for it, it's falling on us. So you got to decide how you disassociate yourself from this. So I just want to say that in this period, we're in a period in which, because Trump and these forces you find in Europe are into nationalism, they're into retreat. And so what they want to do, Trump, he wants to say he doesn't want to do too much in the world, except worry, because with this unlimited, unrestrained power, the Supreme Court, basically he's violating all laws coming from the district courts. The Congress under the Republicans are completely submissive to him because they're afraid of being primaried. And some of them are afraid of the MAGA base coming after him. That's why they didn't impeach him to begin with. You understand? So fear is driving a lot of this. So the thing is, there's a normal move, and during Trump's first administration, that's what he practiced, to go inward, to go into an isolationist position. However, because of neoliberalism, it's global, and neoliberalism is basically what's going on now with the capture of the federal government. It's to take the things that you paid for that are in public hands, like the Department of Education. They want to fold it. They can't do it without 60 votes. So what they're doing now is trying to smash it as much as possible, and to put what little money will be left in the hands of the states. That's states' rights. Do you remember what that was? That's how slavery worked. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
So the thing is, while there's a retreat into the country, and right now he's making the comment they don't want to do anything in Ukraine, which, by the way, he's right on. They should have never had that war in Ukraine, and Biden's responsible because it was being negotiated, and Biden sent Boris Johnson, who was Prime Minister of Britain, to tell the head of Ukraine, who's a comedian. You all buy this thing of he's brave and everything. He's a damn comedian. Ain't got no comedian. Of course, he's a talk show host. And Ronald Reagan was not even a B-rated movie actor. I mean, he was so dumb his wife divorced him, Jane Wyman. She was an Academy Award-winning actress. An actress divorces you. You got to be dumb. And said, he's just too dumb. I think she liked his body. But after she got in touch with his mind, she said it was all over. He's what they call a cipher. A cipher is somebody who's empty, is a non-entity. When you met with Reagan, he wasn't there. He never said anything because he didn't know what was being said. Now, Trump is in some ways more empty, but more dangerous too, because he comes up with ideas and gets to operate on them. Whereas Reagan was programmed. He had a script. He was an actor, and everything was read from a script. When he ever got off script, he was wrong. There ain't no script for Trump, other than those executive orders coming from Project 2025. And they are implementing that. And for those Negroes that said, oh, they wouldn't do this, oh, do you really think so? And I even saw a few on the internet talking about they're too hard on Trump. Too hard? You're not hard enough. You hear me? And hard enough is whipping them. Anything short of that, it's not hard enough. So the thing is, we're faced with an insular nationalism that's going to focus on this country. The main issue with MAGA and Trump and the right wing is demographics are shifting. This country will be a majority black, brown, red, and yellow in less than 20 years. They can deport everybody they want. They're not going to be able to change that. The white birth rate is down. It's down all over Europe. But here, this is the first major global power whose ethnic base is going to change. And that's what's behind all of this. They're doing everything they can to grab control of the levers of power so they can stay in power. That House of Representatives should not be Republican, but they gerrymander it so much that they've got a fake majority. And if you're not careful, they could win the midterms if they keep their base on their side. The problem is what they're doing is hurting their base. You got farmers screaming right now because all that money that they told Trump to unleash in spending has not been unleashed. So farmers are not getting their stuff. That's Trump's base. The rural white vote is part of his base. And then they're earmarking, going in, trying to get everything on your taxes, on Social Security, because sooner or later, they're coming after Social Security. And if they're smart, they won't do it in their first phase, because they will then rile up their white MAGA base against them. They'll try and do it later if they're smart, because as some of them have said that are doing the cutting, we need to take our time with this and get people to go along with this. You know what I mean? So try that, though. Once you touch that, and especially Medicaid, those are poor people. That's paid for exclusively by the government. You hear me? And by the way, I pointed this out in one of my shows. Um, Social Security could, only reason why it could be considered for cuts is it's treated by everybody, Democrats, Republicans, and the mass media, as an entitlement. And you know darn well entitlement means something the government paid for and gave to you, therefore they could take it back. What's the problem with that? That's your money. And it's the biggest amount of money in the federal budget. Huh? Why did they put it or treat it as an entitlement and treat it as though it's an expense in the budget? Technically, I pointed this out in a previous show, and I hope you go back and watch all 5 of these shows, because I'm laying a foundation for what you need to know to effectively fight these people. They call it an entitlement and treat it as a cost item because when they cut the check, the government's paying for it. But it's your money they're paying it with. You get the trick? Huh? And this is the effort of the right wing to end what's left of the New Deal. And that is the only thing that people have in this country. And why did they set up Social Security just based on your money? The government should be matching that money. They're not. It's just your money. And right now, Elon Musk is getting the names of all of that, all those people, so they can target, even before they do cuts. Target, just like they get your tax information. Target. And to do what? He doesn't even know. He's like Trump on this one. Whatever they want to do. That's their definition of freedom. So the thing is, we need to understand that when nationalism becomes insular, and in this particular case, it's got a mass base, and that mass base is MAGA. 74, 75 million, 2,300,000 short of the election, but 6, 7, 8 million short in a base. Their numbers are smaller than the people opposed to them. And had the Democrats run right, they would have won. I sent a letter to Kamala Harris advising her on this. I led the movement that politicized her mother and father, you know what I mean? And basically told her, even though you've walked on water with that campaign, it looked real good, you're going to lose unless you address the pain of the people. And that's not just black people. That's black, brown, red, and yellow. This wrapping yourself around the flag, I know why you did that. I'm not knocking it, you know. So you black girl running for president, you know. So you're saying I'm an American, blah, blah. I believe in the system just like you. But this is not mourning in America. This is pain in America. And you better be addressing the pain. And so, you know, I ran down a series of strategies and stuff. And I doubt if she even saw the letter, but Biden knew this. That's why he came up with his infrastructure. That's why he came up with his reindustrialization, his CHIPS Act, and his Pro-Environment Act. That's why he did it. That's why he won. Because he got enough of those whites to be convinced he was going to do something. Because that's how Trump got in the White House, by speaking to the pain, but he's a fake populist, not dealing with the pain. And right now he's just getting super rich off of them. And they are right now silent, though some of this are starting to scream, because they think that this is DEI. This is diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are these inferior blacks who are taking advantage of us. That's what they think. When in fact, the major beneficiary of affirmative action was white women. And guess who they went after first? It was a 4-star white Coast Guard female general. Not only removed her, took her out of the house, had no place to sleep. Because white nationalism is anti-female, but white women, the majority of them support it. That was Kamala's mistake of thinking that she could get Miss Cheney and people like that, and white women would slip in and vote against their husband. Don't you realize that Trump represents their daddy, their grandfather? Yeah, he's abusive, and their husbands. Yeah, so you think they're going to turn? Yeah, you wasting your time. So in terms of what do we do? One, we got to understand what time this is. And we better understand with insular nationalism, whites going to get violent. You better understand that. You up here praying to God, praise the Lord and pass some ammunition. You better be prepared to take care of your black behinds. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. And we've got groups running around parading around with guns and stuff. That's nice, but that ain't how it works. They got right-wing militias all over the country, and Trump just got through freeing a whole bunch of them, through the
Yes.
attempt to overthrow the government. Freed all of them, and you got some of them, like the Proud Boys, the head of which was a black man who was a FBI informant. By the way, did you know that?
No.
He lost his position when they revealed that. You know what I mean? Torrio, they are talking about going after the people who did them wrong. You mean the people that put you in jail for 25 years that you deserved? Trump let them all out. It's like opening up the nut house. And I don't mean to play with mental illness. Mental illness is serious. But you should have a place where you can care for mentally ill people. They've been left on the streets. That's what's opened up now. And they're on the streets now. You understand? So the first thing you better understand is that is part of what you're going to be dealing with. So in organizing, you better be prepared for it. We need to know this culture, this new African culture, as much as we know African culture. And it's the young hip hoppers who are the ones who are most conscious, who are expressing it. And they are giving us an example of what it is. It's the All Black Lives Matter that I think is no longer alive as a viable force, that again showed that the youth had mastered the culture enough that they drew from Ella Baker's playbook and went into group-centered leadership. Some of them, like my former, well, not a student, but I had an influence over, the major organizer in Black Lives Matter is a sister named Melina Abdullah. She was chair of Black Studies at Cal State, Los Angeles, and was a student at Richard Navy's classroom. Richard Navy's had the only Black Studies department in a high school at Berkeley High. She was influenced by that. She was influenced by the Black Panther Party. But others in there, some of these real brilliant young sisters who framed out of Ferguson and the murder of Black men, Black Lives Matter. Brilliant. That took Trump out. You hear me? That's not a force anymore. But the point is that the hip hop generation could come up with that is a sign that there's a lot good going on with this generation. And this is the generation that is going to face the major challenge with what's going on right now, as well as us who can support them in any way we can, offer whatever advice we can. So what we have to do is organize. We have to rebuild extended family communities. And the extended family was weakened by drugs being put in our communities. We got to rebuild those. And we need models for rebuilding them. I don't have time to go into this, but my twin lineal model is the model. That is
Dr. Shaka.
Yeah.
We have a hand up, and I see.
Okay, what I'm going to do is wrap up and then bring them on. I'm just about finished, and then bring them on.
All right.
Give me 3 or 4 minutes. So twin lineal families is like the key paradigm for rebuilding families. And this has been the essence of our family culture. We didn't just have a name for it, because basically Black families survived 100 years, two-parent households, 75% two-parent households from 1865 to 1968. The fragmentation of two-parent households have only come since the forces of deindustrialization, redevelopment, prison industrial complex, a lot of other things have hit our community, but mainly violence that has created a wedge between the young and the old. So rebuilding extended family communities on a model that is both male and female, because that's what basically the twin lineal model is. It's no male without female, no female without male, no masculine without feminine. So that's a model for rebuilding our communities. We have to work on our health and get the health together and quit blaming other people for your bad health. Yeah, we're stressed, but the fact is that if we go in and really take care of ourselves, then we can do a lot better. A trying time or a crisis is both a bad time where bad things are happening, and it's an opportune time. This is a time for us to clean house. This is the time for us to do, as some of our people say, mow better. This is the time to go back to the best of our past to make a better future. So that's it. Hotep.
Thank you so much. Take yourselves off mute and let's give him a round of applause.
Yes.
Thank you, Baba.
Well done as always. Yes.
Thank you, Baba.
Ante.
Ashe.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Sister Tony. She sparked up when you mentioned Mr. Davies at Berkeley High. She's a graduate of Berkeley High. All right. Brother Tony, Sebastian, go ahead with your question.
Baba Tashaka, thank you very much for laying out that plan for us. Real quick, when you were making that trip to Sacramento to look for that lawyer, was he by any chance Nathaniel Colley?
No, it was another lawyer, but it wasn't him. Yeah.
Okay. And the next thing is you mentioned the Trump propaganda. In 1992, you came up to Carol's bookstore, and I purchased your newly released leadership books at that time. And you go in depth of speaking of propaganda in the second part of that. The propaganda we're dealing with now in terms of the media and social media, what can you say as it relates to that propaganda and how we can best help to equip our youngsters that are tapped into that so 24/7?
Yeah, well, the shows that I've done, and this last show last week focused on that, and I was dealing with how neoliberalism, which most of our people don't even know what it is, has undermined our community. And neoliberalism, or a man named Milton Friedman, who was an economic advisor to Reagan, and basically comes up with the idea that markets rule everything. And that's all you need. Just let the markets do their thing. Now, that idea collapsed in 2008 when the economy collapsed, because markets means that greedy people who have all the wealth get to do whatever they want to do. And what happened when the economy collapsed in 2008, because the previous administrations, Democratic and Republican, had freed the economy of all checks. And so under Roosevelt's New Deal, there was a check on banking. It was called the Glass-Steagall Act. Under that act, banks could not go and play with your money in the market. They still can't without your permission. But now they've been given permission because Clinton ended the Glass-Steagall Act. And even when Obama comes in, he doesn't restore it. They have some minor things they do to try and put corporations under control. So neoliberalism is based on this idea that the markets will take care of everything, and the water will rise so that everybody's boat will float. That's called trickle-down economics. That's bull. In other words, the rich can keep grabbing your money, and they might do something that helps you. All they do is make you poorer. So what's happened with propaganda is the major propaganda that's been dangerous for our people. My last show, you should go watch it, for our churches. for our community organizations, for our youth, is this idea that materialism is the most important thing. Money is the most important thing. You understand? And there's a section of hip hoppers, the major ones, who bought into this, right? And, who are supporters of Trump. Most of them too smart to get up publicly and say it, like 50 Cent. They offered him $5 million to speak at the Madison Square Garden thing, where he, went up and, had a lot of people of color that was mainly white. But he's made it clear that he supports Trump. Shaq O'Neal talking about he likes his tax cut. Okay, take it and oppose him. Why are you supporting him? He said, well, he didn't say righteous, but he's a good man. And in fact, Shaq O'Neal bought, I think, a $130,000 car for his wedding, Trump's wedding present to his current wife. He didn't give it to him, though, so he ain't that stupid. He keeps the car at his house and says if Trump wants to drive it, he can drive it. Huh? So one of the reasons that you saw the black vote, which remained high, 87% of blacks supported Kamala Harris and opposed Trump. 92% of sisters. Sisters are the most conscious group we got. Ain't no sisters falling for no Trump. You understand? But the fact is, when Biden ran for office the last time and won, 86% of black men supported him. But when Trump runs this time against Harris, 78% of black men supported Harris. Now, I'm not knocking black men because most black men have got their act straight. But the fact is, you've got a 78 to 86%, that difference right there, 8%, I think, difference, that could grow. That's the problem. And I understand why this younger group of black males, who probably make up the majority of that, did that, because they're the most highly incarcerated. They've got the lowest pay. They've got the highest unemployment rate. You understand? They are the ones who have been disregarded more than any group. So I understand why they're vulnerable, and they're open to glitz. And so the propaganda of glitz. So the media right now, if you see how the media is operating, the media is going soft on Trump, or they have taken any kind of position that would be opposed to Trump and muted it. The Jeff Bezos silenced the Washington Post from endorsing Kamala Harris. The LA newspaper did the same thing. CNN, the owners of CNN, which is Disney, instructed their reporters just before the inaugural address not to be critical of Trump. Give him a chance. Give him a chance. He's already told you what he's going to do. You understand? And then if you watch CNN, they have a pro and a con, and they give as much representation to what the right wing thinks as what the Democrats think, and it basically drown the message out. So propaganda. So what's happening with Trump is he's got control of the House and the Senate, and has got largely the media muzzled. And places like MSNBC, which was the anti-Trump platform, have lost so many viewers that they're being fired right and left. And how long that will even be there, at least in that position, is a whole nother story. So what you're seeing is, in terms of the truth is going to come from us. It's going to come from the organizing we do in the community. The real challenge to Trump is going to come from the streets. And right now, that is coming from people who have lost their jobs. And so that's where the demonstrations are coming from. But for the real organization, it's going to have to come that way. And then there are ways in which they're vulnerable. I've talked about some of this before. This requires organizing to do. But there are ways in which they can be attacked where they're vulnerable. But the main
Okay,
job we got is rebuilding our communities.
okay, we have a question from Minister Bill, and then I saw Damani had his hand up as well.
Yes, you seem to have quite a clearer view of young groups who get it, who really do understand what's going on. Can you cite some that might make better partners for us, for our retirement age activists?
Yeah. Is that a question?
Yes. Who specifically represent who you might think of as the best or most promising partners for our efforts at collaboration, intergenerational collaboration?
Yeah, the intergenerational ones, they're the ones who are political and doing stuff. So you've got the ones in the South, for example, who were really running the whole voter registration thing that really shifted the Senate in favor of the Democrats under Biden. It was a shaky 2 votes. Those two were in the middle of the road, but he was able to squeeze out 1.9 trillion out of that. So it was those organizers in Georgia and places like that, a lot of whom were young sisters, brothers too. Notice who Biden rewarded. He rewarded Black women. He picked a Black vice president. He picked a Black Supreme Court sister, who's the best choice he could have made, Ketanji Brown Jackson. She's Black. I'm not talking about her complexion, which she is, and beautiful. And she got her an African name, but she's Black in the excellent sense. And that is due to Harris. Harris came in and weighed in on that choice because Biden was going to pick someone from South Carolina, because the member of the House from South Carolina played a key role in him being picked by Blacks in South Carolina as the presidential candidate in the primaries in 2020. And she was a middle of the roader. So Harris went in and told him. She did her research and homework. She said, Joe, remember this. This is your only choice of a Supreme Court justice. And you want this to be something you're proud of. Leaning in made the difference. So part of who do we work with? It's the people out there doing the work right now. Some of them are elements of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is fragmented for reasons you're not aware of. People think, oh, they took some money. No, that ain't what happened. So elements of them, but it's the activists, young people, some of whom will step forward under this crisis, some of whom have been organizing all along. Along with that is we need a coalition of groups in the Black community that will move. And so one of them is in the Black church. See, the Black nationalist is super hard on the Black church. And most of them ain't in no African spirituality either. But, they're down on the Black church. But for example, the Progressive Baptist Convention, that's a group that can be organized behind this, because there are things that we have to do that's going to take people power. So there are elements like this. There are progressive Black churches. I have contacts with a lot of them around the country. These are churches with 5,000, 10,000 members. These are not the, money hungry churches. These are churches doing something for people. So you need those. Community organizations, there are elements of groups around the country that have been doing organizing for a long time. And some of these are young people. And some of these young people are good at economics. Most Blacks who have organized in my generation are broke, and they have no sense of how to build an economic base. And they're proud of it because they think, because they're really Christians in disguise. Poverty is strength and all this stuff. But you've got some young people who are really good with economic development. That's a part of it. So there are groupings in the Black community, and they will come together. They have to be brought together. But that's going to be at the grassroots level. That's where the change has got to happen. But the big work for grassroots organizers is rebuilding families and communities. And then out of that, economic institutions. That's the real job, and others as well. And so information, education is real key. Coming from the youth, coming from us.
All right. Thank you, Minister Bill, for that question. We have a question in the chat. How can we access your show?
You just go to Dr. Dr. and then OBA and then TSHAKA show, Dr. Oba Tashaka show, and it will come up. It's on YouTube and it's on Facebook. It comes on every Saturday at 10 in the morning, but you can catch it anytime you want to. We've done about 233, 234 shows. We did some reruns last year, but we also did new ones. But most of these are new shows. They've been all carefully researched. Dr. Obenga was on one. James Smalls has been on a few. But basically, it's been dealing with ancient African history, African-American history, African and African-American culture, political issues, but we deal with timely issues. So we've been focusing on what's been happening with MAGA and Trump because it's a timely issue. And so, yeah, all you have to do is hit that and come in. And if you can, make a donation to the show. I put over $50,000 out of my pocket into these shows, and I'm not going to continue to do that. I have a sense of self-interest. So there's a certain point where I say, So people are becoming more consistent in donating. It ain't going to me. Brother Cinnabar is the person I pay, which when you lost Cinnabar, you all really lost a good technician. Do y'all know that?
Stop saying it. Yeah,
Cinnabar
yeah,
is good.
you're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's
you're
been
right.
a life. In fact, his business is called Lifesaver, and for a good reason, because I'll say, Lifesaver, I got a problem, and Cinnabar is right there. So he's helped me out. And then I got other people who are technically more advanced than him who have donated their services. I got a brother named Ugawa who started on the show when he was 38. He's been on it for going on 5 years. And he is now becoming a co-administrator for the show. And well-read, read some stuff I haven't read. Comes from good parents, you know what I mean? The younger generation. That's why I did the show. I ain't doing the show to talk to my group alone. That's talking to the choir. Did it to talk to young people and the elders. And we've got viewers in South Africa, in Kenya, in Ghana, in different parts of Africa. We've got them in Europe. And of course, the biggest base is right here. So, and we have viewers starting at age 25. And that's been the key thing. Hit that group, but we need more. But they got us on slow algorithms because that's really where the propaganda is. It's the rhythms that run, the algorithms that run the internet, and they're run according to money. If you got something that's got money and it's stupid, if you got stupid talk and you just, girl, you know what? You know what I mean? Huh? Oh, the numbers go up. But you start talking, and they tried to knock me out, you know. Facebook knocked me out. They actually cut me out. Well, I have a student who I got into a master's program at San Francisco State in a master's in business administration, Lawrence Freelo. Lawrence was a member also of Pan-African People's Organization, doing a lot of organizing with me. And Lawrence is now living in Asia. He likes Asia. And so he has a Chinese friend who's way up in Facebook. Talked to him and he just restored me. Ain't that nice?
Yeah. Yes.
Otherwise, I've been silenced on Facebook. But it's hard for them to get me on anything technical because I'm not cursing, I'm not lying. You can fact check my stuff, you know, huh? But they can do it to you no matter what you're saying. but they're less likely to do it. So that's been that side. Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions. We have, did somebody say yes?
Yeah, Damani.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brother Nemani. Yes, go ahead.
Doctor, over to Shaka. Yeah, I enjoy your Saturday shows. I go back and watch all the videos, especially the one about Arianism. But a quick question: you didn't explain the two cultures. I think our people are confused about the European culture and African culture. You know, Dr. James Small talked about the 7 elements of culture. And Dr. Marimba Ani talks about our worldview versus their worldview. You know, our worldview, we're a unified spiritual whole, focused on spirit and the God within. Their worldview is individual beings. And so it seemed like, how can African people come together if we have a different concept of culture and a different concept of what a worldview, to me, which guides our spirit, guides our modus operandi, our worldview, if we have a different, you know. So that's my question.
Different from what?
A different worldview?
Yeah, you mean that we as a people have different worldviews? Is that what you mean?
Yes, I'm saying African, well, our ancestors had a different worldview. You know, we was a spiritual unified whole. It's more like the democratic socialism. Democratic socialism they practice in Sweden, Switzerland, some of those Nordic countries. It seemed like what we should be moving to it, you know, to me.
Okay, I'll give it, but I did give it a brief definition. I didn't go through all of it, but I did. I pointed out that there are certain keys to African or New African culture. And I said spirit was one. I said family was another. I said humanism was another. I said freedom is another. And there's a whole bunch more. And I've written a book on this. Integration trap, generation gap caused by choice between two cultures. And we have made the mistake of neglecting our own culture, and our scholars have been the ones most responsible for that, because most of them who are Afrocentric have focused almost exclusively on Africa. That's the root, but we're the fruit. And don't assume that we don't come from a culture. So I'm going to give you a little novel explanation of this. Black nationalism. Let's take Black nationalism. The idea that we're a nation within a nation, you know. Malcolm X was a Black nationalist. Marcus Garvey was. Martin R. Delaney is like a father of it, and others, okay? So let me show you how this works with the people. You have nation state Black nationalism. That's what they are part of. That is, if you were Imari Obadeli, who was in the Republic of New Africa, then your idea of a nation was we needed to have states in the South. That would be the nation state, okay? Or Garvey, we needed to leave the country, go to Africa and, you know, reform with Africans, you know? And Malcolm was in between and then evolved into a revolutionary who was talking about the chicken and a duck egg, and the chicken was revolutionary. Chicken couldn't produce a duck egg. And if a chicken did, it would be a revolutionary chicken, right? So Malcolm was talking about the need to restructure the society along revolutionary lines. You're suggesting it could be based on Europe. That's actually not revolutionary, because what the Europeans have in providing healthcare, education, and stuff like that, that comes from Roosevelt. That's the New Deal. That's not revolutionary. That's good, and you need that. But revolution is when you restructure a society so that it benefits the poorest among them, all groups, ethnic and otherwise, you know. So in terms of culture, so that restructuring requires us to have a vision of just societies. My book, Return to the African Mother Principle of Male and Female Equality, addresses that. Among the African-centered scholars, I'm the only one that's a revolutionary. Did you know that? Albinga said that, but that's a fact among the African-centered scholars. And so this book lays out the vision for how, what's the basis for a just society? And God gave me that answer. That answer was what it was before. So if you watch my early shows, I do a series on the Anu, who are the founders of Kemet. They come from the Kun, the Chwa, who are the world's first people, who actually established a civilization that lasted for 130,000 years. It's not studied. That's the hunter-gatherer society. So when I was talking about I went on retreats and I went through this spiritual stuff, I had a visitation from God. I saw a beautiful light. And God is a great white light. And without speaking, when I was asking, what's the basis for just societies of Africa? The answer was based on the Chwa, which I never expected them to give me a Chwa answer. And so without speaking, the light said, and you read this book, have any of you read Return to the African Mother Principle of Male and Female Equality? Have you read it, brother? One that just asked the question. Have you read it?
No, I have not.
Okay. Marimba Ani and I both presented our books because they came out the same year at ASCAT's conference in 1995. She went first and dealt with Urugu. She comes out of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. She was the wife of Bob Moses. And so she presents the view of the unjust society, Urugu, which in the Dogon system means the masculine minus the feminine principle. So what she's doing is showing that the Western system is based on the cold-blooded Aryan masculine model. And she does a critique of this and everything else, which is quite good. And then I went through mine where I critiqued Sheikh Anta Diop and showed that he was wrong in his two cradle theory. That was like going before the Pope and telling them that Jesus wasn't the Son of God, which he isn't. And afterwards, Jacob Carruthers came up to me because he's my teacher. He's a little guy, he's a great man. He came up to me the next morning, and I'm looking down at him because he had read the manuscript. He had given me critiques. I had tightened it up based on some of his critiques. And he said, what you said yesterday. And then he did about 10 varies, was very, he has this deep voice. And I'm wondering, what the shit's going to happen? Because if Jake says I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I knew I had done my stuff. He had said so. So he says it was very, and then he finally said, necessary. So what's the vision that comes out of here that's a basis for restructuring society? What is it that's lacking with the Marxist view, where they say it's equitable distribution of wealth? And that's a good idea. That's why I'm not anti-Marxist, but I ain't no Marxist either, because it comes along with an Aryan or European worldview. And by the way, Aryan means Lord and Master. These are the people that give rise, and remember, Ani doesn't cover this group in her book. They give rise to they give rise to the nomadic societies, and then in turn, out of them comes capitalism. It's a system where the Lord and Masters, who are the warriors, Arius, Lord and Masters, control the Aryans. And in Western thought, who are the Aryans? The no good for nothing, dirty people. That's white people. You get it? And so when you buy into, so why is it that the Marxist revolutions that said they wanted to equally distribute wealth, why is it that in the Russian Revolution, which wasn't a revolution, it was a coup d'etat at the top, they seized power, why is it that they use as much violence on the people as the czars did? In fact, more. The Chinese didn't do it as bad because they have Confucianism, but they did it, but they didn't do it as bad. because they have some ethical content to it. You know what I mean? So the vision for just societies that I received from God, and when I say this, these are God's words, not mine. I'm asking, what's the basis for just societies? And so in this experience of the light that I won't go into, it's my most beautiful experience of my life, beautiful light. Choice between two cultures is a smaller light. What God said is the just societies of Africa were those where God didn't say any of that. I'm just giving you the preface to this. Were societies where, and the rest of this God said. And when I get this, I don't hear a word or anything that's telepathic, the light without speaking. These were societies where all the males and females were equally empowered to govern every phase of society. In other words, just societies are based on the balance between males and females. I ran this to my mother, as I said, was an A student and very smart. She said, what makes more sense than this? As a Black woman, I've been fighting for this all my life. So that's the answer for how you restructure societies. It's got to be based on that, because societies is made up of nothing but males and females. Now, for that to work, there has to be a synthesis of masculine and feminine. The spirit and reason, they have to be synthesized so that we're about creating kind people. That's what you had for 130,000 years with hunter-gatherer societies. And these were societies with no slaves. It's the only society where there was no slavery. What's wrong with Marxism? They talk about equitable distribution of wealth, which I agree with, but there's no equitable distribution of power. And where would that power be? It would be between the males and females. I like Castro, great man. He sent his army into Angola to stop the South Africans. Good for you. The problem is everything started and stopped with Castro. You got a majority of people in Cuba who are African. But where was their say-so in this, let alone the majority of Cuban people? So the Cubans did very good at what Castro was good at. He was a good man in many ways. I respect him, you know. He wasn't out for the money. He was always wearing his little green military uniform with the 45 on his hip, and he lived simple. He wasn't into the wealth, but he was into the power. And so what was Cuba good at? They were good at the medical system. In spite of an embargo, they have one of the best medical systems in the world. They have a great educational system. And in fact, I was able to get one of our members into their medical school. He was just homesick and couldn't stay for the whole education. Smart enough, but he just couldn't hang in. He missed his family, part of our culture, and they're good at intelligence, meaning spies, because the Russians trained them in that. They're better at spycraft than the Americans are. You understand? So the Cubans, they did a lot of good things, but you know what they failed in? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everybody is queued up for rations to this day. People don't get enough to eat. Why? Castro did not allow the people to have a free say-so in running that country. That was his mistake. Notice, I ain't putting him down. I like Castro. I'm a revolutionary. I wouldn't have survived 5 minutes in Cuba once I started opening my black mouth, and a whole lot of other people. Africans are entrepreneurial by nature. Africans are into business. And guess what? Not capitalism, communalism. And it's been Castro's brother, Raul Castro, when he came in, he was running a better economy in the military than Castro was running in the government. And so he started cooperative. He started encouraging people to do that. They should have done that in the beginning. And there's a lot more they have to do. And yes, there's an embargo. It hurts them. But it didn't stop them from having good education. It didn't stop them from having good medical care. It did not stop them from outfoxing the CIA. So don't tell me you can't produce breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The Cubans are eating worse than they were under Batista. That's because Castro was not into economics. Most leaders of revolutions are not good with the economy. Mao wasn't. Let the people do that. So that was a mistake. So I'm saying this formula of all the males and females being equally empowered to govern every phase of society, you have to be creative how you apply that in a large society, right? But that's the basis for it. And the basis for it is people who are in leadership, be humble, listen. But the people have to have the power so that if you don't listen, they're going to do it anyway. You know what I'm saying? China is a strong nation now. Why? Because Mao, who was not good at economics, and a lot of people died under some of his policies, not because he was against the people, he cared about the people, because he was no good with economics. But when a guy named Deng Xiaoping came in, who's barely 5 feet tall, and what he did is he told the farmers of China, I don't care what color a mouse is, as long, or cat is, as long as they can catch mice or rats. What did he mean? I'm not running the economy based on ideology. I'm running it based on what works. So what did he tell the farmers? You are free to do what you want to do. And guess what? China took off. I'm into business, by the way. I'm just not into making money. I don't worship money, but I'm good at it. And I know this, if a people are going to prosper in an economy, this ain't capitalism, this is communalism. They got to make a profit from it. That's the bottom line. You hear me?
Okay.
So
Okay,
the point is, let me finish this. So
All
the
right.
point I'm making is this, that this idea of male-female equality works in the family. It works in the community, and it is the basis for reconfiguring a society. It's got to be updated to 21st century realities. You got to be creative with it, but it's the people that have to have that power.
Dr. Tashaka, we have 2 more questions, and I'm going to let that remain. Those are the last 2 questions. One coming from Minister Bill, and then one in the chat from Mama Darnisha. Go ahead, Minister Bill.
So the Bay Area seems very much saturated with tech industries.
Say that again, the Bay Area is what?
The Bay Area seems very much saturated with tech industries.
Right.
Are you seeing any Africans of any age who are both tech savvy and attuned to the sort of broader African themes that you're emphasizing?
Yeah. I'll give one example. I have a former student of mine who's running some coffee shops. He set up a business in the Hunters Point, and now he's running them in the city hall in San Francisco. He set up programs in the Hunters Point. He's a computer technologist. He worked for a $1 billion law firm that services Facebook and these other corporations. He's quit that and he's setting up his own businesses now. And I've had him on one of my shows where he talked about his business. But what he's done in the Hunters Point is he set up computer training for young Black males in the gamut of computer technology. And then he's also operated stuff through San Francisco State for ex-cons coming out of prison, training them in that. So yeah, there are brothers and sisters like this. And what I've learned from them is that the younger generation is technologically oriented, and particularly the younger Black generation. But whites, of course, they get the job. Silicon Valley has been hard on hiring Blacks. But the fact is, Blacks, because our culture is a creative culture, Blacks are good at creating programs. That is where they're really good in computer technology. Whites are better at managing programs. They do innovation too, but that is basic to our culture. That's a key component of our culture. So yeah, there are people out there with those skills, and we need to rebuild our skills in the Black community. Because one of the reasons why families have fallen apart is we were overly concentrated in manufacturing. And when those jobs went, it just did a devastating hit on Black families in places where we were in the industry. The Bay Area is not one of those places, at least not, Oakland, San Francisco, down the peninsula. Yes. So yeah, that's part of what needs to happen. So yeah, there are people out there, but that needs to be an emphasis, key
Okay.
emphasis.
And once more on Mao and food and such, I'm understanding that in fact anyone who's leading needs to have a strong scholarly base. And when you mention the food, I'm reminded of what was happening around early Tuskegee and the dominance in agriculture. And in essence, there is a very widely dispersed and disseminated intelligence around growing things. And if you can't capture that and put that to use of the people, then you're really going to have a hard time. If you expel that, if you disable that, it's rough.
Well, it's rough
Can
for
you
us
speak to that?
because our farmers got no aid from the federal government. And so the federal government is what keeps farms alive or they go dead. And what's happened in the US is farms have become multinational. So it's the big farms that run everything. And most of the small farmers have been driven out of business. And so, but at least those, when they were operating, could get something from the federal government. That just now they're giving us a little reparations on, for money we never got. So it knocked our business out. That's only part of the reason. Violence was the other. You get land and whites come and tell you they're taking it. You got 24 hours or you're dead. That happened. So there's a lot of reasons for that. So I don't know if we can bring back agriculture. It would be an important thing to do, but I don't know. That's a hard one. But whether we do or not, we've got to rebuild economies, in our communities. And we've got to be able to protect the economies we build because they will come after you because for Blacks, Black wealth is considered a threat, particularly if it's dispersed among Black people. That's considered a threat. And so they will come to take your wealth. So you better be able to defend your wealth.
Understood.
That's a lot of different ways you do that. It's not the obvious ways you think of.
Thank you.
All right. Just this one question, and can you discuss your thoughts on the Burkina Faso Captain Ibrahim Traje?
Triore, and actually prefacing that, good evening, Dr. Tashaka, you mentioned this Hunters Point. I'm also based in Hunters Point. When I first met you as a student, I was living in the public housing of Hunters Point. Who is that organization and the person that leads it? Followed by my larger question of just generally, what are your thoughts about Captain Traore in Burkina Faso? But I'd like to know who that organization is and who's leading it in Hunters Point.
What organization are you talking about in the Hunters Point?
The one that you were just elaborating on that does the
okay.
IT work.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the brother's name, but he has a coffee shop in the Hunters Point, and he's been working to build that. He put all his money into it because again he couldn't get the financing for it.
Okay. If you think about the name of that, I'd love to know who the name is.
Yeah, contact me later. I can get it to you. I'll give it to Imhotep and he can give it to you.
Thank you.
In terms of not just the brother you're referring to, but French West Africa in general, there's a move in French West Africa to expel the French because the French are still running a colonial project in Africa where they take the money of governments, put it in the bank, French banks, and then let them borrow from their own money. I mean, this has been the French system. And then they've come in to occupy different countries in French West Africa to allegedly fight what's called the jihadists. But it's just been a way for the French to take control. So there's a movement in West Africa, in French West Africa, where the leadership, in this case, often the military, is empowering the people and running a Pan-African agenda and saying that they want the Europeans out. And they're trying to run a system that will be run by the people. And we'll see how that goes, but that's a good move. Usually military leaders are lacking in understanding how to maneuver in this economic environment of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, which is basically where you're going to get money to run a government. And then that's how they entrap you. So assuming that they can handle that, that's good. But whether they do or not, it's a good move. You know, it shows that the younger people are waking up. And in this case, they're using the gun for good advantage.
And
Where
Ibrahim
that
Traore is a very young man. He's 38. He's the youngest leader in Africa. But I was hoping that you might have some thoughts on Ibrahim Traore and Burkina Faso in particular.
No, that's it. That's my general view, that all of them are moving. Those that have pushed the French out are moving in a similar way, and it's good. You know, where it goes, I don't know. You know.
All right. This has been a tremendous Black Knowledge Matters. We have gained tremendously from listening to the experience, the oratory, the guidance of Seba, Dr. Obatashaka. I want to thank him for granting his time to share with us. And I'm glad, I hope that you all will visit his podcast on Saturdays. Very informative. And if you can't catch it on Saturdays, as he said, go to Facebook and or YouTube to get the programs that you missed. Thank you, Dr. Tashaka. I'm not going to allow any more discussion. It's 7:24. Some people are on the East Coast. And I just want to say, Asante Sana. I really appreciate it. And I'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks. I appreciate you all. Right on.
Ashe.
Thank you.
Peace. Live up.
Live up. Live up. That was nice, you know.
Live up. Yes, it was.
That was nice.
Thank you so much. We appreciate and love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Shuck.
All right. He's going now. Signing off. Live up.